Hi, it's Wyndham. Welcome back to this awareness series, Let's Talk About Blueprints. The intention of this series is to give you an overview of my philosophy that underpins the whole approach to write your own blueprint. We've covered what our blueprint is and how it works. We've covered the three phases of our blueprint. And last video, we started talking about inclusion criteria. And at the end of the last video, I linked into what this video is going to be about. And in this video, I want to talk about our beliefs and the things we think are true in and about the world and in and about ourselves. Because if we recap, if our blueprints automate our reaction to stimulus. Right? It is driven by a desire to remain included because our survival drive requires us to be part of groups. To be part of groups, we have to meet the inclusion criteria and adjust our behaviours accordingly. And that automation is attached into our blueprint, connected to our beliefs and our truths. So I want to talk about the beliefs and truths today because they're very difficult to shift, right? When we think we know something, man, that is really challenging to adjust it, to change it, which if that belief is serving us brilliantly in life, we don't need to change it. However, the vast majority of us have blueprints that are studded with beliefs and truths that do not serve us. So I want to talk a little bit about that today. I think the real breakthrough for me, and I really hate the term breakthrough because it suggests, light coming down, the band. And I don't think they happen very often. But it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me when I realised that the beliefs I held and the truths I held actually had nothing to do with the truth. Their function is to stabilise how we view the world and how we view ourselves. We live in an incredibly chaotic world and universe. And without that stability, that predictability, that certainty, every time we go out into the world, we would never get anything done. That's the reality. There are so many stimuluses coming towards stimuli. There are so many things coming at us all day, every day, that if we didn't have this automatic reaction to things, we'd never get anything done. We would be completely overwhelmed. And we've seen it as, our general awareness of autism, for example, increases. We can see the overwhelming nature of the universe we live in, and our beliefs and the truths that we adopt that permeate across our whole of our blueprint, they provide stability. They provide predictability. They provide a level of certainty that means we only have to deal with a smaller number of variables in every day. I use an example in one of the previous videos of every time I leave the house, my blueprint tells me it's going to be all right, don't worry. Don't have to think about this. I just go up to the front door, I open the front door, I leave, and normally I have to go back for something I've forgotten, but I don't have an issue. My blueprint has a belief within it, studied into it, that nothing bad is going to happen. That cannot be said for everybody. Some people have a belief that something bad will happen, and that then becomes their point of challenge when trying to leave the house. But it's predictable. It's not serving them, but it is predictable. It happens every time. So, truths and beliefs are actually stabilisers. We put a great deal of weight on the truths and on what we believe, and that in itself can become a big challenge for us. I'm going to do another video later when I talk about our resistance to things in our life, and this is where it originates. But if we can start to think of our beliefs and our truths as stabilisers, then we maybe create some space to work with them. Because as I've said, most of us carry a whole raft of beliefs that do not serve us, that actively hold us back. And I want to talk a little bit about those, just to bring it into some context for you. So I think we've probably all met people where they are confident. They do not lack self-belief, almost potentially to the point of arrogance. We've all met those people who truly believe they are exceptional. And every time they go into a new environment, they bring that belief with them. They have absolute certainty. Their world is stable. Their view of the world, their view of themselves is stable, predictable, and certain. I am exceptional. There is nothing that I cannot deal with. It's a belief that provides stability. But let's look at where that comes from, because this is where it links into the previous video about inclusion criteria. Somebody who is like that, I don't know their origin story, but this mythical person, let's say, has heard that every day of their lives for the whole of their lives. Those phase 1 groups they were a part of that they couldn't choose, the primary caregiving environment, the family, education, the school, any other significant group they were part of, if all they heard all day, every day was, you are exceptional, exceptional, there is nothing you cannot do, then that permeates down into their belief. It becomes solidified around a truth in their life. So when they look at the world is stable, there is no challenge they cannot meet. Now take the alternative to that. If in phase 1, in your one of those important early creators of our blueprints, the family, primary care group, education, any other significant group, if actually what you're hearing is you're not good enough, you're not worthy, first up, that's not true. You absolutely are good enough, and you absolutely are worthy of what you really want. But as a child, you are not aware of what is going on, and you have no choice. So you have to remain in an environment for your survival, and you adjust your behaviour, your inclusion criteria, to that idea, this idea that you're not good enough, that you're not worthy. And as you hear that more and more, guess what? It solidifies into a belief, into a truth that stabilises the world. So every time you go out into the world, whenever there is a potential opportunity in front of you, you don't take it, because the stability of the world, the predictability of the world tells you you are not worthy of it. Let's take another one. I know a number of people who struggle to speak up, who struggle to advocate for themselves, who struggle to share an opinion, who struggle to be heard in the groups that they are part of. Let's track that back. Now that we have a sense of what is going on, our blueprints, inclusion criteria, the 3 phases, truths and beliefs being stabilisers, well, let's track that back. Where does that behaviour, the being quiet, come from? What were the inclusion criteria, the protection mechanism that triggered that behaviour? Because to begin with, it was just to remain included. Over time and repetition of that message, it crystallises into a belief and a truth. So that when we go into the world, if we deeply believe that our inclusion, our acceptance and our survival, let's never forget these all pin back to survival. If we believe that our survival depends on us being small, on us being quiet, guess what? That is the behaviour we are going to exhibit. It's a really, I pause there because it's incredibly powerful. You know, in your life at the moment, you will be dealing with some of these things. We, as coaches, we talk about people pleasers and avoiders and hypervigilance and, I don't know, any number of the hyperachievers, any number of these, what we tend to think of as personality traits, I believe we can trace back to inclusion criteria of the groups we had to be a part of in order to survive. And as we rehear these messages over and over and over and over again, they become beliefs and truths. They stabilise the world. It becomes predictable. You are not good enough. Your needs are less important than my needs. To do this thing exposes you to failure. Failure equals rejection. Rejection equals death. They're pretty grand schemes that we think, oh my God, calm down, Wyndham, you're being a bit dramatic, aren't you? And yeah, to some degree I am. But the ancient part of our brain doesn't realise that. We are trying to remain included. And the really interesting part here is we deeply own our beliefs and our truths. We think they are us. We think they are ours. The truth is, unless you have specifically gone in search of the things you think you believe and the truths you think are true, and you have pressure tested those truths and beliefs, you have exposed their fault lines. Unless you have done that, the things you think you believe and the truths you think are true have been given, imposed, or conditioned into you. Until you have taken all of those things you believe and exposed them to your lived experience, to what you know about the world, until you have had conversations with people who don't automatically reinforce them, they are not yours. Now, I said I was going to do a video about our resistance, and I would expect a proportion of you out there to deeply resist that as a concept. And that's okay. I only ever ask, is there 10% of what I'm saying that you feel you can bridge to? Because if you already know all the answers, there is no changing how you are or where you are or the life that you're living. And if that life is not truly rewarding, full of meaning, fulfillment and happiness, well, I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that we're stuck where we are. The path to change is difficult, of course it is. But if you are resisting this as an idea, the next video, we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But for today, I will leave you with that. I will leave you with this idea that the things we think we believe and the things we think are true really are acting as stabilisers of the world and our view of ourselves, so that it is predictable. There is certainty in our lives. It is not, those beliefs and those truths are not interested in us having a good life. They are not interested in us thriving. They are interested in us surviving. And unless you have checked your beliefs and your truths, pressure tested them, and proven them to be true, deliberately, intentionally, how many of the things you think you believe are really your own? I leave you with that. I wish you a peaceful and joyful few days, and I will speak to you soon.